Hey guys.
What's up, Monday night?
I know. Special live.
I like that you still have a fireplace, though.
I know, right?
Yeah, a
Um,
little echoey in that big old room, though.
I know it is kind of echoey. Sorry. I'm so tired. If you guys can't tell, this probably won't be super long because everything closes early here. And I'm freaking tired. It was a long day, and tomorrow's gonna be another long day. Hey Lacey, hey Michelle. And I talked a lot, if you can't tell. I was like, well,
Little
every
social butterfly today.
pretty much. Mhm. Hey Moon River. Um, I know, Debbie, that was probably the freakiest piece
We're
that
doing comments.
that kind of I don't know, that was for me. We had never heard anything like that, and then they got into a fight about the defense about his arm, and I'll get to that. So, oh, you are too? Yeah, I'm exhausted. So I was just going to kind of tell you guys about the experience and walk you through. But the thing is, they bounce all over the place. They don't go in order, which kind of drove me crazy because I had like this piece of paper that was like, okay, all the tranquilizer stuff going to go here. No, they would give you like effect, yeah, the tranquilizer, and then they jump to something else, jump to the deer, and then they jump. It was not organized. We'll put it that way. So I could not proceed. Well, okay. So they were supposed to let 20 people into the courtroom, and I got there early. I was number 11, and then they decided to let 8 in because of social distancing. So I was really frustrated. But at first I was upset, and we had to go to not upset, but like disappointed, go to the fairground. But it actually turned out fine because the screen. So there was hardly anyone in there, and I got to see the front of everybody. So it was just, looking at Barry head on was interesting.
You saw him like in his face.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, we
that's
had the judge's view.
oh, that is interesting.
So it was
Okay.
kind of neat because normally it's the back of everyone's heads.
Is she cutting out for anybody? I just want to make sure before she continues on. I know she's a little echoey because of the room that she's in, and then she's just on her laptop. So that's something I think we're gonna see. A lot of echoes. I'm gonna mute. So then, and I promised I wouldn't ask a ton of questions because she needs to be able to eat dinner tonight. And I'm like, I have so many questions. And I'm so jealous that she's there and I'm not. But yeah, I think every time you talk with your hands, it like seems to cut out your mic.
Oh, sorry about that. Hold on, let me try. Well, I'm Italian. I'm gonna have to sit on them. I know it's echoey,
Sit on your hands.
right? Um, yes, I do live in Colorado. Sorry, it is so echoey in here.
I don't
I'm,
think you're not going to be able to change that
I'm
because
gonna change.
that's top in the room. So I think it's as long as you sit on your hands and then I'll mute and then hopefully that'll help a little bit with the echo.
Okay. Hey,
I
Jen
don't
Lynn.
know how long I can stay muted for, especially with this tent underneath me.
Well, ask questions if you want. You know what? That I was actually going to bring that up. That's really frustrating. Sorry about the echo, you guys. There's nothing I can do about it. The masks were frustrating because something big would come out, and then I'd look over to see Barry's reaction, and he has a damn mask on. So, and I think that's really important when you see those, you get something because you could tell by his body language, certain things ticked him off. There was a couple times they were talking about the chipmunk gun, and then just the way they said it, and they kind of laughed. He would sit up and cross his arms, things like that. I always pay attention to body language, so. And there was definitely some tense moments in there between, the prosecution and the defense. Definitely, it got a little heated a few times too. So it was interesting. That's much better. Okay. Let's blame Teresa because I think it was her fault. Look at her. She's like, shut up. Yes, his girls were there. I saw them this morning. It was interesting. Everybody was so nice and got to see some other YouTubers that were there and even met some people that knew Suzanne and Barry, and they were super nice. And basically, the whole gist of what I got was that Suzanne really was a great person. She's like everything that we've heard she is. A lot of people, they said that at first they didn't think he would be capable of this. And now, their thoughts on that have changed. So, no, I didn't see, because again, I was watching from the big screen. Tomorrow I'm going to try to actually get into the courtroom. But I believe Lauren would know better than I do, but I think they had using WebEx.
I was just unmuting to say that. They get a WebEx link so they can be there and not actually be there.
Yep. Yes. Okay. And I don't even know where to start because, well, let me know, LH, if it's better when she mutes. They went through all the trash runs. And the one thing I found really interesting from that is, so you've got all these 5 trash runs, right? And he's taking all this time, and he's got an answer for everything. That's another thing. They have an excuse for absolutely everything. And there was a couple times they contradicted themselves that I caught, and I tried to make a note of that. But even after all those trash runs, that's how they started off. They talked about how when he got back to his house, when he, knew that Suzanne was missing, his truck was still a cluttered mess. So, right? I'm going to have to, Jen Lou. So that doesn't really make sense, right? Okay, better when she mutes. So he still had a cluttered, messy. I know, I agree, Michelle. And it is interesting. And I know that people get sick of saying that we always talk about the animals and the hunting, but it is a main theme of this trial, and it will be, because he relates absolutely everything that they brought up to it gets related back to hunting or an animal. It's almost bizarre. I mean, I get that that's his passion, and according to him, the only thing he has left in his life now, worth living for. But
not his daughters,
right?
The ability to hunt. Sorry, I'll go back to mute.
No, that's great. No, I like your point. Unmute for your good points. No, but that's true, and that's what he said. That if he doesn't have Suzanne, at least he has hunting, and that's fine. But it's bizarre how everything relates back to animals. It's just, I don't know even what. I was actually going to look into that more. Exactly, Newfie girl. But they started off with that, talked about how his truck was still cluttered and dirty, which didn't make sense at all. And then they started arguing over whether a Bluetooth can sync into a car that's off. And that was kind of funny because, not funny in a funny way, but some of the arguing was a little bit funny because both sides would dig their heels in and nobody was going to budge. And so nothing really got resolved a couple times. There's a lot of, objections. Yeah, executive session. I actually agree with what you wrote. I saw that earlier. Your theory is exactly what my theory is. That is exactly, when I heard about the damage today, I 100% think that is what happened. And that's so sad. I would say next to his, and of course we should have said that he's not been convicted of anything. These are just observations.
I put that in the description.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. But I will say, after sitting there today, and we haven't even got to tomorrow, there's a lot more, in my opinion. Man, I think that it's pretty obvious what happened, just my opinion. But that was the second biggest bombshell for me, was the damage to the door frame. And the defense did object to that. They were not happy when the agent on the stand said that it was characteristic of burglaries when someone would kick a door in. And they objected, they didn't like that comparison because they said, well, that's not relevant because that's your opinion. But it sounds like it was a huge crack in the door frame. And it does sound like she probably, if he shot her, and we learned today that someone her size would take about 8 minutes to pass out from a tranquilizer. So basically she probably did run into the bedroom, lock it, which is so sad that she knew at the end, if that's what happened. But that's my opinion. And probably passed out because of two things he said about his last impression of her, which was interesting. But I think she passed out on the bed, and that's that. Yeah, I bet she was too. Sorry, I'm missing some of your comments because I'm trying to get through so much information. So,
and I'm trying to like click on comments too, and then they go by, and this is not my forte, as I said on Friday. This is the world right back here. I'm trying.
I know this is just me trying to get all the information to you since you couldn't be there, because it was actually really, really interesting. And there's so much information they gave out. It's a lot to process. I'm still kind of trying to process everything that they talked about today. But yeah, it was, I do think that he kicked the door. But now what sparked it, I go back and forth on that. There's a lot of interesting things there. We know that job was pushed, it was planned for months and pushed off. But we also know that she was texting, Jeff right as he was coming in the house. So, not that far after. So I just don't know if he was set off, or I do feel like there's definitely some signs of, I don't know what you think, Teresa, premeditation there.
Well, I have some feedback, so I mean, I don't want to stay unmuted for too long, but I think that he probably walked up upon her while she was messaging, and then he took the phone, and they had some form of altercation, and she takes off. He gets the trank gun, shoots her somewhere in the house. She gets to the bedroom, because one of the things they said was that it would take 8 minutes for a woman her size to actually be out from the tranquilizer gun, which is freaking disgusting anyway. And I think she probably made it to the bedroom and locked the door, and then he busted in the door, and she's passed out by then, and the rest is what we're waiting to hear.
That's exactly what I think. The bikini. Yeah, they didn't collect the bikini, but then we don't know if she had changed out of it or not. And they really pushed that point that, the defense did, the bikini was in the closet. You didn't collect it for DNA, but their point was, well, we don't know if you can only see, I guess, a tiny little piece in the picture. So they don't even know if it's the same one. She has a bunch of them. And maybe she wasn't wearing that, because it contradicted himself. At one point, he had told agents that the last thing she was wearing was like these little white shorts with kind of a white stringy top. And then on another date, he told the agents that she was nude the last time he saw her. So, I mean, there's definitely, and I would try to write down every contradiction. And then what I'm going to do is go back, organize all of this, and try to make a video out of it that is succinct and makes sense. You think that's what happened to you too? It was really weird sitting in court like that and looking at Barry's face. Like I said, I wish he didn't have a mask on, because I couldn't read his face with some of this stuff would come out. No, I didn't hear anything about the neighbor seeing her that morning. No, you wouldn't wear that to bed. So then, he said though that they came home, they had vegetable soup, they both sat out in the sun for like an hour, that they had the best night, they had dinner, he said they had sex, and then, it sounded like he was trying to make it this magical night, when I personally don't think she was alive much past 2:47. No, I don't either. Bo Peep. I don't think she would ever leave without her daughters either. And that was another thing. And we've talked about this. You guys know that there's been that Gone Girl thing they've pushed. And they don't, in my opinion, they brought up some valid points, but I don't think that holds any water. First of all, her car, when found, had her purse, her ID, her credit cards, her health insurance card. All of her belongings were in her car. She also had cash. So their argument was, why would she not take her cash. That's not traceable. Even if she wanted to disappear and start over, she left everything. She took no clothes. So she left with no clothes, no cash, no ID, nothing, no health insurance when she had a doctor's appointment the next day. It just doesn't add up. And the defense kept trying to push that, well, how many people, when they want to disappear, they're not going to bring their ID. But it just didn't make sense. Oh, sorry, I missed something over here. Yeah, I think there's a lot of the stuff they were trying to stick with. I think that there was a lot of explanations. It was just kind of, I don't know, to me, there was a lot of reaching going on. Exactly. She'd need a passport, something like that. Let's see. I'm just going to go in order because I circled the big. Okay. So I don't know if you guys saw the tweets that Lauren put out, but there was a lot of talk about this left turn versus right turn. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. So this is basically and this is where they kept coming back to this. So you can kind of tell the two big things they're going to come back to. It's going to be this antlers story with the left or right turn, and it's going to be these tranquilizers. That is going to be the big things that are focused on. And sorry to answer your question, Maui Girl. Yes, I personally do absolutely believe that there's enough to go to trial. Yeah, I know, Ambi. So this basically, when he left that morning to go to Broomfield, where we know he went, he had to go right. Well, he turned left. So to explain that story, he volunteers a reason that he saw a bull elk and, with these huge antlers, and he was following it. Well, the problem with that is, they had all these, I learned a lot about hunting today and all kinds of antler information and tranquilizers. Sorry, my throat's dry. So basically, the problem is that elk shed their antlers in March. So by May 10th, what he's saying happened is impossible. So that was a huge thing that he slipped up on, in my opinion. No, they weren't there, Patty. And then the other thing was, it was really interesting. The undersheriff said that on the 1-year anniversary, he got in his car at the exact same time, drove the exact same route, and it was pitch black. Couldn't see anything. And I talked to some locals too, who said that where that is, that didn't make sense to them. That didn't sound plausible. Welcome, Grandma Pama. So it was pitch black, and they wouldn't have antlers in May. He said that they would have shed by March. So why did he go left? Because that's in the direction of the helmet. I bet they were too, Elizabeth. Yeah, Bo Peep, I'm going back tomorrow for the full day. It starts at 9:30, but there's a lot more. So I'm trying to, tonight, when I'm going to get something to eat and put everything together, I'm going to try to kind of sort through this so I can, like I said, put it in some kind of order, because there was so much good information. But that's going to be a big deal, him going left instead of going right, because he really can't explain that. And the story that he gives can't be possible. So why is he lying? Yeah, right, Kate? So I thought that was interesting too. Hey, Linda. There was a lot going back and forth about the cell phones. Where I had a screenshot of something I've never heard of. I was going to see if you guys had heard of it. It's some kind of cell phone. They called it a cell phone phenomenon. And static drift. Have any of you guys heard of that? I'm such a nerd. I thought this was fascinating. So it's when your GPS shows your phone movement, but there's actually no movement. So the defense is trying to argue that some of that movement at the end is static drift. But, how much water that holds, I don't know. Yep. That is exactly what they said, that the majority of the elk will lose it by March. and not going to have it by May. So it doesn't make sense. Hey, BZ Mama. That was so cool getting to meet some people today that in real life, it's so different than being online. So that was really cool. Yeah. No, and he made the weirdest statements to agents, and I have those at the back, but okay, so one thing I learned about Barry today, which we already knew, right? But he does not accept any accountability. Everything that happens to him is everyone else's fault, including God's. I don't know how many statements we heard today where it was God's fault. You know, well, it's in God's hands. Why would he do this to me? I do think it was a win for the prosecution side. At the beginning, I didn't know, but as the day went on, absolutely. And Kevin Kobeck was there. You guys are probably familiar with him if you followed Watts. I don't know about you, but I was excited about that. I feel like we already know each other. Yeah, that was cool. I got to meet BZ Mama today. Get to meet Jules.
I was just making a little comment about Kevin Kobeck. It's like you know each other. It's like we know Kevin Kobeck.
Yeah, he may not know that we're buddies, but we're totally buddies. No, they called his name. I was like, oh, it's Kevin. How many videos have I made about you? But you know, it was interesting because he interviewed Morgan. So, and he held his own. I mean, things got a little heated with Agent Kobeck, and things got a little heated with the undersheriff, but they held their own. They stuck to the facts. Everyone on the stand did a really good job. I thought it was just fascinating all the way around. Hey, Vanessa, Colorado girl. And then another interesting thing was when they were getting the pizza at Moonlight Pizza, I think that was on 5/8, she texted Jeff that Barry had mentioned moving to Arizona, and she thought that was weird. I don't know if any of you guys know any more about that, but I had never heard that before. Oh, but you've heard of static drift? Never heard of it. Okay, so
for more information on static drift, Profiling Evil did a video on static drift for the cell phones today, and it's actually very interesting.
Well, then go watch that because I definitely will.
Vanessa's done, then go watch that.
Yes, because that is interesting. There's a lot of things I'm going to read up on. Like I said, the tranquilizer stuff was really interesting. They clarified that the cap, was actually the cap to the syringe. So they wanted to clear that up. And then you have to, use the syringe to put the tranquilizer fluid in there. And the whole thing, they talked about that. I would say they'd leave it and come back to it the entire day. It's obviously going to be extremely important. I did see the girls before we went inside.
I know there's a lot of people that are asking questions about like prosecution versus defense. And one thing I just want to make sure everybody remembers is this is not the trial. All the prosecution has to do at this time is to make it so that the judge will agree to move the case to trial, which then you'll see more of the evidence, or even more of the bigger bombshell evidence sometimes doesn't come out till trial. If they feel like they have enough, they try to keep that, the prosecution will keep that under wraps.
Yep.
So it's right now, it's just, is there enough to go to trial versus is there enough to convict? Because nobody's getting convicted right now.
Right. The DNA stuff was interesting. I was trying to pull that up. They talked about the DNA in the bike, the helmet, and the cap that was in the dryer. So let me make sure. I don't want to misspeak here, but Barry's DNA was not on the cap. And a lot of people are like, well, maybe it's because it was in the dryer or whatever, but no, because I believe 2 other people's were. I am on information overload. It was also not on the helmet. So there's that. Another interesting thing was he was allegedly wearing khaki shorts. And those were in the dryer with Mallory's sheets and with the cap. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and okay, so the injuries, that was really interesting. And it got heated over the injuries. The defense wanted to argue about were those scratch marks, because the prosecution, I mean, they stated that there were 3 marks on his upper left shoulder and that they were parallel. They were scabbing over on May 13th. And that, the implication was they were fingernail marks. The defense argued and said, she said she didn't even see 3. She saw 2. She thought one was she called it some kind of aging mark. And he just said, well, I agreed. We'll have to agree to disagree. I absolutely think it's a scratch. So they disagreed on that, but, and then he had injuries on both hands. Yeah, that's possible that the DNA could be on, who picked it up before. And then there were some things that, irritated me. For instance, they'll try to throw out something like, and I know this is just a tactic, but man, it's definitely an attack on her character the entire time. And they made a comment here. I have so many pages of notes, but basically saying, and in her drawers, she had so many medications. So in your mind, you're thinking a drawer full of medications. And they corrected her. Yes, it is live. They corrected her and said, oh, you mean the 2 bottles? So things like that, just little cheap shots that, 2 bottles of medications. One was hydrocodone. One was a antidepressant, not a ton of medications or a lot of medications. I think that's that's nothing shocking at all. So those types of things I thought were irritating. Oh, thank you. Thank you guys. Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine what it's like for her family to have to sit through this too, because they're definitely, they talked about the Facebook, okay, and how, I think it was on the night of the 8th, Barry went to bed before Suzanne. She stayed up. She friend requested some men and changed some codes. And, and if this all is the way it looks, she was murdered not too long after in a horrible way. So I don't know. There was a lot of that going on, and that will be probably throughout the duration. Exactly, Anthony. And for being a cancer survivor, I thought that was a very small amount of medication. I mean, both of my parents had cancer, had way more medication than that. So just those types of me too. There are a lot of the victim blaming, or just trying to say that she was picking up a prescription that day, and that there's a video of her grabbing the white prescription bag. Yet neither one of those bottles has the date of 5/8 on it. So what's in the, it's the implication, well, what was she getting, And then of course there's the fact that Barry is saying that she was an alcoholic, into drugs, that he offers up a theory that she was killed by a drug dealer named, what was this stupid name? CBD Tim, I believe it was. This drug dealer that she allegedly bought from. I mean, and then there was a really important contradiction that I caught. So he tries to say that when agents show pictures, the pictures that Suzanne sent to Jeff, they tell him about the affair. They show him the pictures, and he describes her as looking drunk in every picture. So he's trying to paint this picture, thank you, Michelle, of her being an alcoholic and drunk all the time, which I personally, from what I've heard from people today and seen, don't believe at all. I know, CBD Tim, right? So anyway, how does somebody get a dart like that? Oh, we'll have to go back to that. No, there was no mention of illicit drugs in the house. But that is what he said. It is. It is, Karen. There was a lot of that going on, especially at the end. I was actually in shock because I already, saw the signs of no accountability, but the comments at the end were just jaw on the floor type stuff, Nothing is his fault. And he made kind of one comment that I thought was kind of sick, honestly. It was one in particular, a couple of them, but and I totally jumped tracks. So if anyone wants to remind me what the hell I was talking about, feel free. This is why I can't look at comments. It's like squirrel. I'm pretty sure I was in the middle of a contradiction, but yep. Oh, I remember the drinking. So he paints this picture that she's drunk in all the pictures, right? But then he goes back and says and he says she looked drunk on 5/9, on May 9th, that she has drunk eyes and look how drunk she looks, right? But then he goes back later and says that they had the most perfect night. And the reason that they had the most perfect night was because she didn't have any chemicals in her body. Another cheap shot. And these just kept on going and kept on going. And you could tell at the end, I got to find some of these that I sent. I was trying to write down the ones that just really bothered me and put them in quotes. But
did you talk about him claiming immunity?
Oh, yeah. At the end, when we got into the things he said to the agent. Here we go. So he asked them if he could get immunity if he spilled his whole life out to them. Right? It was shocking. The stuff he said was shocking. And cold and just kind of, I don't know, because at one point he also said, so when anything would make him look bad, he would say to the agents, why would God let me look like that? Anytime they brought up evidence that made him look bad. So it's God allowing him to look bad. There were so many comments like that. He also, this was creepy, he told agents that he would, if Suzanne would have brought divorce up, he never would have talked about it with her because it was never going to happen. And then the prosecution came back with, and it never did. Right, Lucy? No, it doesn't.
So we talk about one comment where he said, you're going to be able to fix the quote, but he said that Suzanne was more fit and more.
Yes, I was just looking because I don't want to misquote.
Right, because that's important. The way he says that.
Yes. Okay, this is the creepy one. Here, let me heart this one. God, this one gave me chills. Let's see. He said that she was a totally different person towards the end. And so he noticed, and it's interesting because he pinpoints the changes back to 2018. And we know that the affair started in 2018-ish. So he noticed the shift and he noticed the changes. And what he said, though, when he listed what they were, it was that she had never been this fit in her life. I can't find the exact. And she had never been this ballsy. So basically what he made it sound like was she had never been kind of stuck up for herself before or been ballsy before. And this was a new Suzanne and didn't sound like he was liking that very much. Right? Yes, at the end, he felt like the agent betrayed him because, when the agents are getting you to talk, they present themselves as your friend. He basically said, how could you do this to me, to the agent, as a betrayal? I mean, just the logic, the way I know I said to Teresa, like, he's an odd one. The way he thinks, the way his brain works, yeah. Yes, exactly, Lord D. She was defying him, getting more independent, standing up to him. Yeah, and he's cheap. That's why he did the trash dumps. he called himself cheap and didn't want to pay for trash. And the other thing he said, let me heart this one too, that gave me chills. Where is it? Oh, and there was a hot tub chemicals. Hold on, I'll come back to that. What was the other one, Teresa? Sorry. At the top, I'm calling him something because this one upset me. So when agents sat him down, and I have the date on that somewhere, I think it was, I don't want to get the date wrong. Was it April when they sent him down? Hang on. And they told him, we need to tell you that Suzanne was having an affair. And he says, all right, a lot more is starting to make sense now. And they asked him why. And he said, well, maybe God was trying to resolve something. So there you go again. This didn't make sense because he said, how could God ever take my wife from me? But now he understands why God would take his wife from him, because maybe God was trying to resolve something. Disgusting. It is. I do too, Annie. The stuff that he's saying, it's just bizarre. No, they didn't talk about him today. Thank you. Yes. Well, it's all someone else's fault. It was Suzanne's fault. It's God's fault. Right. The whole thing is just really sad. And then they talked about, let's see, I have all the divorce quotes. That's the one quote that I thought it skeeved me out the most. I've gone back and forth, Loretta, based on what I heard today. I think that for a while, how do I phrase this? I think that for a while, he's known that she wanted to leave, right? I mean, he basically indicates that in the things that he's saying. So he knows she's pulling away. He knows that she wants to leave. This is just my theory. But he probably was trying to figure out how to fix this problem. And if he couldn't talk her into staying, he was going to take care of it the other way. So in that way, I think it was premeditated. Because I think he knew in his head if she wasn't going to stay on her own volition, he would take care of that. Just my opinion. Yeah, exactly. Well, he said, that's interesting you asked that. He actually told agents that he thought he would be cleared within 2 months. I don't know where he got 2 months from, but that's what he said. Yep. That was another thing they fought about at the beginning. The defense argued, well, how do you guys know that the text saying I'm done actually means I'm done with the relationship? How do you know it doesn't mean I'm done with some, you're taking it out of context maybe. But when you look at the texts that follow that, where after she tells him that, he threatens to kill himself. I think the context is pretty simple to see there. And then when they asked him about threatening to kill himself, he said he was just trying to hurt her. And as we know, narcissists, they're way too important to kill themselves. But he admits that he was just trying to manipulate her with those suicide texts, which is, it's just, the whole thing is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. What about that? What about the text that she sends, or the list of like the 50 reasons or whatever it was that she didn't want to be married to Barry Morphew anymore?
Oh yeah. One of those, they didn't say what they were, but he did give away one of them. And he said that one of them said that, basically alluded to abuse. So they asked Barry if he had ever physically abused Suzanne. And he said that when they've gotten in fights, he may have pushed up against her, kind of like pushed her up against a wall or kind of like tried to block her in. But he denied ever putting his hands on her and ever abusing her. Yeah, exactly, Mary Rose. I agree, Annie. I think he's a lot about, self-image, trophies, but everything was perfect that night. I do, Shelby. I think that there is definitely enough to go to trial. And everything I heard today about the judge, I thought he was wonderful. And he has a great reputation with locals. The ones I talked to, they think very, very highly of him. They think that he's very fair, but he also doesn't take any crap. And I got that impression watching today, for sure. And I guess as far as, this is just my opinion on the defense, they brought up some good points. I think, I don't know what their record is or anything like that. I do think one of them is extremely aggressive. And she was causing some, they were getting tense with her. It was causing tension, and one of them is definitely more aggressive than the other one. Cobalt Shadow. They ate steak on one plate and then had sex. It was like, the perfect night. How strange. Here's another big contradiction before I forget, and I think this is going to be an important one to remember, you guys, is the Broomfield job. At the beginning of the day, they talk about how when he gets up to Broomfield, he realizes that, I was wrong. There's actually not that much to do up here, so I'm just going to go read over the job and wait for the younger people to get here and do the work. But then later in the day, they flip sides and say that when he's up there and he asked Morgan to come up, well, she was supposed to bring Morgan up there and just left her and came up at, in the morning. He was supposed to pick her up at 5:30 the evening of Mother's Day and didn't. But when he called her and he has her bring up a second person because there is so much work to do. So which is it? There was nothing to do, so you laid around and didn't do much, or there was too much to do where you needed more help. And then, of course, even if that gravel would have been delivered, which it never obviously got delivered, they didn't have the right tools. They argued back and forth about the definition of hand tools and, whether or not they could have done the job, but it definitely looks like a red herring situation. Yeah, it is a bit much. Agreed. Yes, the journal. Thank you. So they were told that they would find 3 books with Suzanne. They would find a Bible, the Al-Anon book, and her journal. And the journal they couldn't ever find the journal. And the fireplace had been, and again, this is May 10th, not saying it can't get chilly in Colorado. It has snowed when I've lived here before in June. But there was a piece of lacquered wood in the fireplace. So, and they didn't know what it was. It was not firewood. It was lacquered. It was different than the firewood that was in the holder. But they didn't get to what they think that is. And then there were also some items that could be a book binding, or basically they were implying that he burned the journal. And there was kind of a funny exchange at the end because the defense tried to say, well, could that journal have been full of like lovely, wonderful, happy thoughts to her lover? And the undersheriff turned around and said, yeah, and it could also be full of her hate towards Barry. But that's the implication there. Right, Ellen, I agree. Oh, sorry, run your plate, 5:30 p.m. pickup. He was supposed to pick her up at 5:30 p.m., but he headed up there in the morning and she had to go up there by herself. And then there's that. I don't know.
Do you know how many witnesses they called today? Was there 3? Because they had like 8 allotted to go up, but I think in the first 2 days they only got through 3.
Yeah, they go back and the undersheriff. Yeah, 3. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so then that means that they've been through 6, and they probably have a minimum of 2 more.
Yeah. So I think tomorrow's gonna be a long day, and I don't know. Yeah, he's worried about getting cleared. And like I said, I'm not kidding you, at least 50 pages of notes because I wrote down every little nuance, every little thing they contradicted themselves on. everyone's demeanor, like when they said certain things, if he looks like he got upset by it. So I was trying to figure out how to put all this together. I should just either do a video once tomorrow's over and go through the whole thing, or I don't know, write it out somewhere. Yeah, I agree. She probably did have a list of her fears and their relationships. I agree. I'm excited to see what will come out tomorrow because, today we learned about the damage to the door frame. I mean, the new stuff we learned today did not look good. Hey, true crime analyst. He tensed up a few times. He sat with his hands on his hips. He was in a really nice gray suit. His hands were on his hips for a lot of it. He was very calm. I saw him taking some notes. And then there were a couple times, like I said, when they were talking about the chipmunks, he leaned forward and crossed his arms. That's a great question, Shelby. I don't know how long they're going to take after tomorrow. The judge has to come to his decision. It won't be tomorrow, obviously. I don't know how long it will take, though. That's a good point, if the spy pen picked it up. His daughters were there. The girls were there. I don't know. If I had to say that the biggest takeaways, there's a few. I mean, I had no idea there would be the defensive wounds or what's implied as alleged defensive wounds. He's definitely, I'm not qualified to diagnose anyone, but I don't know what you guys think of those comments about why would God let me look like that? And of course, the one I talked about where he said, this all makes sense now after starting an affair, basically implying God resolved the problem of her cheating by taking her away from Barry. Those types of comments, extremely disturbing. They shed a lot of light on who he is as a person. So that was one of the big things for me. And I do think that there's enough I would be absolutely shocked if he determined there wasn't enough for a trial. I agree, Beth. I think she is awesome. I thought Linda Stanley did an amazing job. They were very even keel. They just laid out their facts. And like I said, there's different styles of different attorneys. The defense is extremely intense. And the one attorney was very argumentative, very aggressive towards the witnesses. It rubbed me the wrong way, but that's just me. I couldn't really tell how they were feeling or anything. Yeah, I hope so too. I didn't tweet. We were retweeting Lauren because Lauren was in there today, but I just highlighted the updates to give out now. Like I said, I probably should do a video and put everything in a timeline because we did learn more about the timeline today. Oh, he made a comment to the agents saying, will you give me immunity if I basically lay out my life for you? Yeah, I think so too, Mary. She's extremely aggressive. I mean, there were a couple chuckles, like a couple of times, because it would just get so tense. It was just kind of like nervous laughter, you know what I mean, where I was watching it. I didn't see him talking to her, but again, I was watching on a huge screen. But I was so focused on Barry the whole time. Right? Can you give me immunity? This was in the spring of 2021. Barry wanted him. He asked the agents if he could have immunity in the spring of 2021. I think so. I didn't see any communication at all. You want me to do a timeline video? I can do that. Right? Immunity from what? Great question. He didn't look as skinny as he used to. He looked like he filled out a little bit. I mean, he looked very clean cut, and you'd never guess looking at him. He had a really nice suit on. He was all polished. Right, Lulubelle? Not, how do you say her name? Eaton? She was the one that was really aggressive. Yeah, his daughters were there, Renee. I agree. It was a really weird question, but he said a lot of weird stuff to the agents. I mean, they said I think it was, he said, I don't recall 95 times when they asked him questions. He didn't come across cocky today. Today he seemed very, it was weird. He was completely, well, again, the damn masks. I wish they didn't have them on, but he was expressionless, just kind of sat there. I think I saw him joke around with his lawyer after a break once, and then he was just really serious. He took some notes. I didn't see them, Maui Girl. I don't think they were. But Lauren would know better. It'll be interesting to see what witnesses come to testify. That's what I think is going to be really interesting. No, I haven't looked into that, Sherry, but I can. Yeah, there's too many inconsistencies. There's too many weird comments. The whole day of May 9th doesn't make sense. He's, caught in lies today. You know what, Karen? You know what's so funny? I actually was talking to my team about that, that there were certain parts, and I had a whole list of why, that reminded me so much of the Watts case. Things that Barry did post-murders. He even said at one point, you remember how Chris Watts used to always say, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Barry would say that to the agents. It doesn't make any sense. I need to check on that because I'm almost positive that they said today that the Facebook passwords, she changed some codes the night of May 8th, but I thought they said she changed the password at like 11:14 a.m. on May 9th while Barry was in his truck. So they knew it was her. I didn't see them being touchy with him. I mean, they sat by him and stuff, but I didn't see them being really touchy with him. Yeah, she was a lump in his bed. No, I agree. Their personalities are different. Just some of the the cleanup. It's just some of the sheets, those types of things were kind of similar. But I think the biggest bombshells today, like I said, were the allegedly kicked in door frame, his alleged defense wounds, especially the 3 parallel, lines down his left upper shoulder. Those are the biggest things. And then of course, what we're going to hear about over and over and over again is these antlers and his left turn versus his right turn. Going to be huge. Yep. And the coffee cup half full and 1 dinner plate. Yep. I do too. This is just my opinion. I don't know if any of you guys know more than me on this, but I personally feel that him wearing a mask is an advantage to the defense. I really do. Because I think it's only natural to look over at him and see his response to some of this and see his expressions. And when they would drop some of this information, I mean, you all look over there and it's nothing but his eyeballs. It was annoying the crap out of me if you can't tell. And I also thought, a lot of people think it's like in the movies where you get shot with a tranquilizer dart and you just hit the ground. But, we learned today that it takes 8 minutes for someone her size would be the estimation for it to kick in.
Was it today that they brought up the chlorine, the empty bottles in her vehicle, or it wasn't chlorine? It was oh shoot.
Yeah, hot tub chemicals. You're right.
Yeah, the hot tub chemicals, 2 empty bottles in her car. Did I misread that?
Yes. When they found her purse, ID, credit cards, all that stuff, there were 2 empty containers of hot tub chemicals on her passenger floorboard. However, then it gets weird. When they went and questioned the hot tub place, they said that he didn't buy anything there and that he just came in and asked about repairing his hot tub. But there were 2 empty bottles of the, on the floorboards. Yep, there she is. She's just muting because there was awful feedback at the beginning, but I feel bad because she always adds great questions. So we'll do another one where I'm not so echoey too.
I'm just excited to hear all of this information, so I'm just absorbing.
Well, and the emotion part was interesting because the defense wanted to push that Barry was extremely emotional and crying and so upset when Suzanne went missing. And she was badgering, the undersheriff even too. Like when it doesn't say in your report that he was very emotional, he conceded to that and said, it does say that in my report that he was emotional. But then he specified, he said, I thought it was crocodile tears. I thought he was forcing tears out with no emotion behind it. And he stood his ground on that. That's a good point. Sorry, they're going too fast. I missed what you said, C-Dub. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking right now that the garbage dumps were just evidence. I think something much more morbid happened with her. Yeah. And then, of course, we already know about him watching that Forensic Files episode about the woman that went missing on her bike. I mean, singularly, they can try to explain these things away and give explanations, which is what they did all day. But when you put all of this together with the timeline, with everything, and the point that, Suzanne used her phone all the time. And this is, again, like the Watts case. She used her phone all the time. And the agent brought up that she suddenly stopped using her phone after 2 p.m. on May 9th. If she was alive and well and able to use her phone after 2 p.m. on the 9th, she would have, but she didn't. I don't know, Stephen. My personal opinion, which is completely speculation, would be yes. Yeah. So, I don't know. And then they've got the trees and all that stuff too. I know it's awful to think about, but that is what I think. That's possible. I mean, Teresa feels strongly that when Barry came home, and I think that is a totally plausible scenario. Maybe he walked up on her communicating or something like that. The timing to me is still really interesting. And then tomorrow we have a whole other day of new information. So Renee, I think executive session said it above, but I think that he shot her with the tranquilizer and she ran into the bedroom, locked the door, and he kicked it in. That's what I think. And it's just so sad. Because she must have been terrified at the end. Yeah. It is so sad for the girls. I don't know how they sit there and listen to this with both their parents. It's just the whole thing. It's awful. But I know, right? We were wondering if he's going to have to come in, if her lover will have to come in and testify. That will be interesting. Yeah. And so tomorrow it starts at 9:30. I'm going to do the same thing I did today. I'm going to take notes all day. I know Lauren's going to be there. I'm sure with, how good she is at tweeting everything that happens. And that's it. Actually, I heard some other people say that today, that he might have used the needle and syringe directly. You don't have to put it in the dart. You can just have obviously, they called it the BAM is the name of the serum. You can put the BAM directly in the syringe and just use it that way. No. He was in a suit. Not that I noticed, unless I'm completely oblivious. No, because he was walking around on the breaks. Kind of like would stand up and kind of walk around a little bit. Oh, you're very welcome. I know I have to go because everything is going to close. All the restaurants are going to close in 30, 45 minutes, and I haven't eaten and I'm starving. I'm going to get sick before tomorrow. But I promise I'll have more updates. I'll have all the updates on tomorrow, and then I'll find an organized way to put it all together. But thank you guys for joining me tonight. Appreciate you.
Thank you for going live with all this very interesting info from boots on the ground.
It's so interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what if tomorrow there's more bombshells coming out. I hate that word, but I don't know what else to call it, because I thought those three things were, I don't know, a huge deal.
Oh, Andrea said the first witness from today was the one from the first 2 days. I missed that, Andrea, so thank you. So that may make me, they would have 3 left.
Agent Gruesing. Yeah. Anyone can buy BAM, yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Love you guys, and thanks. So I'll get the same information tomorrow, and we'll be back to talk about it. Thank you, Teresa, for joining me to meet with yourself. Sorry.
No, that's not your fault at all. No, like I said, I'm happy that I was jealous that you were there and I wasn't.
We'll have to go to, the next one, because it really is different to go in person,
I know, and obviously Colorado, you guys have all the.
There's no shortage.
There's no shortage.
No.
It's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. And I hope Suzanne gets justice. And I think she will. I don't know why. I feel positive. I mean, I think that there is enough to go to trial. And I don't know. I felt good by the end of the day about what they had. So hopefully. Yep. Thank you guys. And I will see you later. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.